Hello, Alabama District. I am Russell Smith. I am the new District Children's Ministries Director for the Georgia District, and I'm excited to be able to participate in the Digital All-Church Ministries Summit. I want to say thank you to Pastor Kendron and Pastor Vint Norris for allowing me to participate, and today I hope to give you some proven principles that will help you to build an all-star team. Now, being from Alabama, there's a team that I cheer for that knows a lot about all-stars and championships. So everybody go ahead and let me hear you say it. Roll Tide. That is exactly right. Sorry to all you Battle Buzzard fans. But today we want to talk about how to build an all-star team in your church. And I want to start by saying this. You know, regardless of the size of your church, I've learned one thing. Everyone needs workers. Whether it's a small church, medium church, or even a large church. We had been at Griffin for 15 and a half years, and I can tell you, even right now, there is still a need for workers. So everyone needs workers. So I want to talk to you about the do's and don'ts of recruiting. Because the best way that we can get people on our team, as it works in football, is by recruiting. So I want to talk to you about the do's of recruiting first, okay? And you've got an outline there so you can fill in the blanks as we go. And we'll try to move through these rather swiftly. Letter A, pray. Pray for God to show and to send you workers. So many times we underestimate the value of prayer. And I want to challenge you today, if you need workers in any area of your kids' ministry, pray. Ask God. Tell Him specifically what you're looking for. If you have to, why don't you write down on a piece of paper, not right now, but if you're in need of somebody, write down exactly what you're looking for and make that a matter of prayer. Ask God to give you that person, that man, that woman that you need to be a part of your kids' ministry. So we want to start with prayer. You know, everything hinges on prayer. So pray exactly for the kind of person that you're looking for. Letter B, recruit based on vision. We need to all be visionary in our approach to kids' ministry. People always buy into a vision. So I want to talk to you a little bit about that. Letter A here, make a list of every ministry opportunity. You know, what's happened in kids ministry and recruiting is when we go to someone and ask them to be involved in kids ministry, they think that they're going to have to do it all, that they're going to be in charge of the entire class, and they're going to have to do everything themselves. So one thing I've learned over the years is to break things down and make a list of every ministry opportunity. You know what? There are a lot of people in your church, they'll never stand in front of a group of boys and girls and preach. But they will work to get craft supplies ready and to get that craft ready. So you may have a craft coordinator or a snack coordinator, or maybe you have someone in your church that paints or builds. If you can break it down and find every job that you're looking for and break it down that way, I have found that people are far more willing to be involved when they know what you need and what you're looking for. Letter B, have written ministry descriptions. Now, some things that don't really require this. There's some things that are pretty cut and dry, but to be a teacher, a ranger commander, a girls ministry sponsor, kids church worker, anytime you can put things in writing, what your expectations are, what the vision of what you're doing is, that's always going to help people. And then also when you recruit based on vision, you learn the gifts and abilities of people. There are all kinds of gifts in the body of Christ. And we talked about it even just a couple of seconds ago. But there are people that will never teach, but they will paint. There are people that they'll never stand in front of a class, but they will organize. They'll do certain things for you. We've had people before that they won't help on a weekly basis, but whenever there's a special event, a big event, a VBS or a Christmas event, they're right on board. They're ready to go. So you have to learn the gifts and abilities of people. So recruit based on vision. Okay, that's very important. Letter C, clearly communicate your vision and expectations. It's important to have a vision, but you have to clearly communicate that vision. So let me give you an example. At Griffin, Our kids ministry was called Kinetic Kids, Kidnetic. In science, kinetic energy is energy in motion. So our vision for Kinetic Kids was this: to empower every boy and girl to put their faith into motion. That was our vision for every boy and girl. We wanted them to have active faith. And we had some core values that we expected for every boy and girl. But to know that vision and be able to clearly communicate it to those you're recruiting and then giving them those expectations are so very important. You want to be able to clearly communicate that. Okay? Letter D, advertise your children's ministry. There are a lot of different ways to do that. You can do that digitally. You can do that through printed materials, church publications. There's a list there through your website. Big days, a ministry fair. Maybe you're having a big weekend at your church and you create ministry exhibits in your foyer or in your church for people to come by and find out what early childhood ministry, preschool and nursery is all about, or they find out what kids' church is all about, or Rangers, girls' ministries, BGMC, whatever it may be. Do a ministry fair and set up ministry exhibits. There are a lot of different ways to advertise and promote. Obviously now through social media is a big way to do that. So I want to challenge you to find every way that you can to advertise your children's ministry. That's a big do. You want to do that. Letter E, you want to recruit one-on-one. Ministry always happens best in the context of relationship. And many of the workers, the team members that we've had over the years is because we have built relationship with them and we've gone to them one-on-one to talk to them about getting involved in what we were doing and becoming a part of that. All right, letter F, involve parents. This is a natural pool for recruiting. And you know what? If we're honest as parents, we want the very best for our kids. And so I find that most parents in general will be involved in some way. And again, if you have some very specific jobs, for instance, I had a lady that helped me at Griffin. She was my registration coordinator. She would show up 30 minutes early. She'd be there to help at the registration desk. We had a team of other people that would help, but she was my coordinator. And you know what? When services started about 15, 20 minutes into service, she was done with her responsibilities. That was something that she wanted to do, but we presented it in a way that wasn't too demanding. There was no prep work during the week. It wasn't a big time commitment. And so that's why one of the things that'll be recurring through this, I want to challenge you to do is find those jobs. Be as specific as possible because that will go a long way in recruiting. So involve parents. Letter G, encourage current workers to help with recruiting. Our slogan has always been everyone's a recruiter. We're always recruiting. And so I want to challenge you, if you've not empowered your team, your workers, your volunteers to be recruiters for you, then do that. Now, the way we always did that, if there was someone they thought would be good, they would come to me, bring me their information, and I would talk to them, or my wife would talk to them, or one of our key leaders. So you want to do that the right way. But remember, everyone is a recruiter. That's a big do. Encourage them, empower your current team members to be able to help with recruiting. Letter H, know your terminology. I've used the word volunteer, I've used the word worker and team member through the course of this presentation already. We prefer the term team members. For those who volunteer and work in our kids ministry, that's what we did at Griffin. We called them team members because teams are important. Everybody on a team is important, no matter their role. So find what works best for you and use that terminology. Okay, letter I, consider all age groups. Senior adults, okay, prime timers. We actually had a group at one time called Rockin' Grannies, and these ladies would come into our nursery. We had them on a rotation basis, and they would sit and they would rock crying babies or rock babies to sleep. That was what they did. That was their job. They were rockin' grannies, and I'm going to tell you, they were rock stars. And they love it. We even had a couple of older men that with their wife would do that and serve together. So, senior adults, they can be involved in a lot of different ways. I remember at Griffin, we had an elderly man that he loved to read. He was a great storyteller, and even at 75 to the 80 years old range, he would still go every week into one of our preschool classes and read a Bible story or a story that that went along with the lesson for the day, and he would go in and read every week. He loved that. He had to quit doing that because of some health problems, but that is a great group of people to recruit. Also, preteens or teenagers. Teenagers are full of life and energy. So, and I know that you probably already know that, but teenagers are a great pool of people to recruit from as well. Work with your youth pastor, your youth leaders. That is a very important thing to remember, because your youth pastors, they know their kids well. And you can work together, and that fosters a great relationship between your children's ministry and youth ministry. And letter J, consult your pastor about potential workers. One thing that I've always tried to do is when there was somebody that, unless we knew them just really, really well, if I had any question at all, I would take that name of that person to my pastor and say, hey, so-and-so is thinking about getting involved. Is there any reason why you think they shouldn't? And sometimes my pastor, I can tell you this, your pastor always knows more than you think they know. And I have to tell you, doing that actually saved me a couple of times because of some people that wanted to get involved, and he knew the information that I didn't or one of our other leaders didn't. So I just want to challenge you with that. So those are some do's, some of the do's. Let's talk about don'ts, and I'm going to go through these fairly quickly. Letter A, don't rely on the bulletin or pulpit announcements. Now, there are certain times of the year when we make announcements needing volunteers for big events and things, and we'll do that through the bulletin or through the pulpit. But if you're talking about your weekly consistent workers, I've not had very much success at all doing it through the bulletin or pulpit announcement or screen announcement. It's just not effective. And so don't rely on that as your sole method. You can still do that. I'm not saying you can't do that, but don't let that be your primary method. Remember, relationship is important. Letter B, don't use guilt or manipulation. Well, if you don't teach this class, then I guess we just can't have it. Don't ever use that tactic to recruit people, because it is not beneficial for anyone involved. And we don't want to do that. Letter C, don't recruit someone who has attended the church less than 3 months. In the day and age that we live in, there are people that come into churches because they intend harm. So, and honestly, our rule at Griffin was they had to attend 6 months. And so maybe that's something you want to write on your in your outline. Change the 3 to 6 months. Because if somebody's coming in and they do intend harm, chances are they're not going to wait around. And so that's a good practice to have. Don't recruit someone who's been there less than 6 months. Letter D, don't recruit simply to fill a position. You want to make sure you have the right person in the right position. Don't just, you don't just want to have a warm body in there. So that's important. And letter E, don't pick apples off of other people's trees. If people are involved in a ministry, look for those people that aren't involved anywhere. In every church, there are always people that serve in more than one way. I have them, or I had them there at Griffin. We had people that way at Saraland, at First Assembly in Saraland when we were there, and even at the little church that we grew up in Tanner Williams. But I want to challenge you, don't pick apples off other people's trees. Try to find those people that aren't involved in any way. Okay, so those are some do's and don'ts of recruiting. All right, I want to talk to you now about becoming a team member, becoming a worker. And there's a lot of information here, and if you want more information, I can give you. I'm not going to cover all of these points. I do want to tell you about a very, very good resource that the national office in Springfield has made available through Richard Hammer's office. It is called Reducing the Risk. And this is a tool that you can use when it comes to recruiting workers, approving workers. There's a ministry application. So we'll kind of talk about that as we go. So under becoming a worker here in your outline, application process. So there are some things there you can see that, but this packet of information that you get called Reducing the Risk from Springfield, it has all the forms that you're going to need in order to do what we're talking about. Every person who works with children or youth should fill out a worker application. And as letter H says under Roman numeral 1, they should do a criminal background check. I am astonished at the number of churches that still do not do criminal background checks on people. Some people said, well, that's an invasion of privacy, or I've been here so X amount of years, and if they don't know me by now, then they put up resistance. I have to tell you, anybody that won't complete a criminal background check is an automatic red flag for me. We had a lady that served in our nursery in Griffin for over 55 years. And every time we renewed a background check, she filled it out. So I want to just challenge you with that. Those background checks are very, very important. Matter of fact, they're mandatory. They should be mandatory for every church. And they have that resource as a part of that Reducing the Risk. We use a different company at Griffin to do our background checks, but we use the Reducing the Risk. So if you want that information for the background checks, it does a local and a national background check. I can give you that. I do have to tell you, I don't remember the website right offhand. I believe it's like christianbackgroundchecks.com, but I can verify that if you'd like that information. Excuse me. I'd be more than happy to find that and give that to you. But I do want to stress that background checks should be mandatory for your church. I can tell you, being at First Assembly in Saraland, First Assembly in Griffin, there were people that we came across that because of their criminal past, they were not able to be involved in kids ministry. And most churches get in trouble not because of abuse, but because of neglect. If you don't use the correct process to screen workers and do those things, you can get your church in a lot of trouble, because you can be personally liable, your pastor, your church. Trust me, you want to let any volunteer, any person that's going to work with children or youth, go through this application process. It's so vitally important. All right, so you see all the information there. But again, that packet, that Reducing the Risk, that resource is excellent, and so I would challenge you to look into that. Okay, interview process. Anybody that potentially wants to be involved in children's ministry, you need to interview them. It doesn't have to be a formal interview. I've listed some things you want to find out about. And you can ask these in formal and informal ways. Vision casting, purpose of involvement. Why do they want to be involved? It gives you a personal evaluation of potential workers. It helps you find out their previous experience, what their gifts, their callings are, their strengths, their weaknesses, and it gives you and that potential recruit the ability to ask questions and get answers. So have some sort of interview process. That's very important. And then the orientation process. This is very important. We don't ever want to just take a recruit and throw them in a room and say, here you go. They go through the application process, they go through the interview process, and they need to go through the orientation process. And I've listed some points here, so I just want to kind of give you a synopsis of how we did things at Griffin. Whenever we had a potential team member, what we would do is we would take a couple of weeks and allow them to observe. They would observe the different age groups. Sometimes they kind of knew what age group they wanted to work with, so we would let them observe that class. But if they weren't sure, we'd give them a couple of weeks, 2 or 3 weeks, to observe the different groups or classes to know what to do. And this helps them to get acclimated to the way we do things. It helps them to see the boys and girls as well. And then once they decide what they want to do, they go through the application process, they go through the interview process. And once they've done that, then we put them with one of our veteran leaders or team members to be with them in their class. They work alongside of them to learn how we do certain things. And so that's been a very good onboarding process with us. 2 to 3 weeks of observation, 2 to 3 weeks of hands-on experience with that key leader, that veteran team member. And then we let them launch out into what they want to do. So observation of classes and service and active participation. So it's been a good process for us. All right, so that's becoming a worker. Everyone needs workers. We talked about the do's and don'ts. We talked about becoming a worker. And now I want to talk to you about the simple art of team building. The simple art of team building. 3 ways that you can build your team. You have this here in your notes, your outline. Roman number 1 under the simple art of team building is building your team through attitude. Our attitude toward everything in life affects those around us. So letter A, the attitude you use is the attitude you choose. Every one of us, whatever our attitude is on any given day, is the attitude we have chosen. No one causes us to have that attitude. No one forces us to have that attitude. We choose that attitude on our own. Which leads me to point B. The attitude you use is the attitude your team will choose. The attitude you use will be the attitude your team will choose. So it's very important for us to keep our attitude in check every time we are at work in ministry and even in our life every single day. The attitude that we have is the attitude that our team will have. If we complain about what we don't have, that we need more workers, we need more supplies, we need more budget, and you know what? Those are legitimate concerns. And everybody has need of those things. But instead of being ungrateful for what we don't have and looking at the negative side of things, we need to have a positive attitude. We need to have a strong attitude toward what's going on. And so, letter C, the attitude you use will determine your outcome. The attitude that our team members use will determine their outcome. If we have the right attitude, our students will have the right attitude, and we will see God do great things in their lives. And that's the outcome that we want. We want to see the lives of boys and girls changed, transformed by the power of God and the power of the Holy Spirit. And that's why we need to build great teams through our attitude. They need to see our attitude in the good times and in adversity, that we have the right attitude. So we're going to build our team through our attitude. Second of all, Roman numeral 2, we're going to build our team through relationships. And I've talked to you about this already, but I cannot stress the importance of this enough. Ministry always happens best in the context of relationship. Your team is going to be built based on the relationships that you have. Now think about Jesus. Jesus had all levels and degrees of relationships. And we read about it in Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, the 4 Gospels. In your notes here, you had Jesus and the multitudes. There were thousands of people that would listen to Jesus. Now, that relationship he had with them may not be a deep personal relationship, but he did have a relationship with the multitudes. Number 2, Jesus and the many disciples. Sometimes we forget that Jesus had more disciples than the 12. Now, they weren't these many disciples, the 70, as is talked about in John chapter 6. The many disciples, Jesus, he poured into their lives. And then you had Jesus and the 12 disciples. And then from there you went to Jesus and the 3. And then you had Jesus and John, and you had Jesus and Peter. So Jesus had different levels of relationship. I can tell you with all of our team members through the years, we've had different relationships. We've been closer to some than others, but Misty and I always made it a point to have some type of relationship outside of Sunday and Wednesday ministry with our team members, whether that meant phone calls during the week, text during the week, simple Facebook message, whatever it may have been. We always tried to have these different levels of relationship. Okay, so we're going to build our team through attitude. We're going to build our team through relationships, and we're going to build our team through training. Now, these next few points are taken from a book that Jim Weidman wrote. But I thought these were some very, very good points, so I want to make sure I give Jim Weidman credit for these. Letter A, wise coaches understand the value of training their players. Wise coaches understand the value of training their players. If we're going to recruit people, we need to train them. We need to give them the resources, the knowledge, and the training they need in order to do what we're asking them to do and what they feel like God wants them to do. So we need to value training. There are a lot of opportunities. You're participating in this training opportunity right now. There are so many things available online through YouTube and through some different websites and things, in addition to good old-fashioned books, CDs and different things that you can listen to, podcasts. There are training events, and I want to challenge you that whatever format it takes, make sure you're training your team members on a consistent basis. Letter B, wise coaches engage their players in training. I've been in full-time ministry. We've started our 27th year in full-time kids ministry. But you know what? There are still things that I need to learn, things that I need to grow in. And so I want to be engaged in training. We have to engage our team members in training. Letter C, wise coaches focus on teaching the fundamentals and then move to skill training. You know, there are some leadership principles that all of us need to know. But then we have this skill training. So I've listed some things here for you. Leadership principles, hands-on techniques, which would be puppets, object lessons, any of those sort of methods. Teaching learning styles and methods, safety and legal issues, trends in children's ministries, specialized ministries, meaning Royal Rangers, girls ministries, JBQ, BGMC, Sunday school, whatever it may be. So whatever area or ministry within the children's ministry your team members are involved in, make sure they get adequate training. And then letter D, wise coaches want to make each player outstanding at whatever position they play. That's a really good statement. Wise coaches want to make each player outstanding at whatever position they play. Now, some positions may seem, you see that fly, don't you? Yeah, it's getting on my nerves too. So, but you know, every position on a football team is important. Some may be more treasured than others, but every position is important. So as kids pastors, whether it's a nursery worker or a Sunday school teacher, whatever it may be, wise coaches want to make each player outstanding at whatever position they play. So we're going to build our team through attitude, relationships, and training. And it is an art. It's something we have to work at on a consistent basis. All right. I've got some more information. I've got you an outline here, and I want to talk to you just about a few things. I found this article by Barbara Beach, and I thought it was a very good article, so this is a good resource. I just want to go through this quickly with you. But I want to talk to you about why volunteers quit and how to keep volunteers. Because recruiting volunteers is one thing, but keeping them and nurturing them and continuing to invest in them is an ongoing process, and it's something we don't always focus on. So let's talk about these things over the next few minutes. So let's talk about 4 reasons why volunteers quit. Okay? 4 reasons why volunteers quit. Number 1, there on your outline. One reason that volunteers quit is because they aren't challenged. They aren't challenged. Volunteers aren't challenged. You know, if you recruit, I know that many school teachers are involved in kids ministry. One of the things that we try to do, if we have a school teacher that is going to be involved in our kids ministry, we try to make sure they never teach the same grade at church that they do at school. There's no challenge in that. Now, unless they're just adamant about keeping that age group, which is fine, and if that's what they want to do and they come to us and say, hey, this is what I teach, I'd like to do, we try to facilitate that. But, you know, we want to find ways that our team members, our volunteers, feel like they're getting something in return for their work. So we want to challenge them, okay? Challenge them in every way possible concerning kids ministry. It's very important. You know, if we try to make, this is one of the quotes in the article that I found, if you try to make volunteering too easy, you just cut the legs out from under it. You know what, it's important that kids ministry, we do want it to be convenient, but we don't want it to be too convenient. We don't want it to be too easy. Okay, and that may not be totally right in the eyes of some. But I find in life that people want to be challenged. Sometimes we recruit people and we don't give them anything really significant to do. So what do they see it as? A waste of their time. And we don't ever want to waste the time of people, especially if they're giving time to help us invest in the spiritual lives of boys and girls. So one reason is volunteers aren't challenged. All right, number 2, excuse me. Another reason they quit is because volunteers don't have a job description. They don't know what it is they're supposed to do. You know, in the 2 churches that we were in, at First Assembly in Saraland and First Assembly in Griffin, we always tried to give some type of job description. Now, there are general guidelines for every children's worker, but then there's some specific things. So make sure when you recruit, when you're building your team, that you want to have a job description, a ministry description. People don't dare say yes to something they don't even know what they're committing to. All right, so make that detailed. I want to go back to something I talked about earlier. Make a detailed list of those opportunities in which you need people to serve. And just write a simple, it doesn't have to be a long ministry description or job description for them. It can be, it may be 2 or 3 things. It can be simple, but people want to know what they're expected to do. Excuse me. All right, number 3, another reason why people quit is because volunteers aren't sure of their performance. People aren't sure of their performance. Team members, volunteers, they want to know that what they're doing is making a difference. And you know what? We need to help. We need to help evaluate them and give them feedback. They want to know the program is better because of their efforts, because of their volunteering. Okay, so from time to time we evaluate. I've had my key leaders sit in a classroom, and I give them just a simple, just little evaluation sheet. It's just got some simple things, nothing too difficult. And they'll sit in those classes and they'll observe and they'll mark that about what that 3 criteria. And I want to tell you, you can use this for evaluating volunteers. You can use this for evaluating events. It's become a part of my DNA. When it comes to evaluation, what works well, what needs improving, and what needs to be added. And you know what? You can do that with your team members, with teachers and people who are involved. Just give them a simple evaluation. Hey, you know what? You're doing an incredible job. You know what? I noticed you're doing this, this, and this so very well. But have you thought about this? Have you thought about trying this? So there's a way to do the what do we need to improve and what do we need to add. There's a very, very right way to do that. But I believe for the most part, our team members, our leaders, our volunteers, they want evaluation. They want to know that they're making impact. And then the last thing that I want to talk about, why volunteers quit. Well, volunteers aren't trained. We've talked about training, so I don't want to spend a lot of time on that. But volunteers quit because they say yes to something and assume that somebody is going to train and support them. So if we're recruiting somebody, we have to be ready to train them and support them in every way. All right, so those are some reasons why volunteers quit. But let's talk about how to keep volunteers. How to keep team members. We've got 8 things. We're going to get through these very quickly. Number 1, know what your volunteers want. Okay, we talked about that interview process. We talked about building relationship, getting to know your volunteers, your team members. Okay, know what your volunteers want. Know what's important to them. Okay, what expertise do you bring to the program? What do you need out of this experience? Help volunteers understand that they need the experience. What are your goals working with children? Okay, so these are some of the things that will help you know what your volunteers want. All right, number 2, understand current trends. Understand current trends. This was a statement that was made in the article. 2/3 of volunteers work outside the home. A lot are part of the sandwich generation and inheriting additional family responsibilities. So there are a lot of current trends. Children's ministry has changed in so many ways over the years. I've got to tell you, as a kids pastor, not only am I've over the last few years have I become a pastor, but I'm a counselor, I'm a therapist, a pharmacist. there are a lot of different jobs that being a kids pastor has morphed into. So understand the current trends of what's going on. And when we can share those current trends with our team members, with our volunteers, and give them that information for them to be able to use and put to work, that's going to be important. And also with this current trends, I know this is not going to sound right, but people are not as committed as they used to be. So we've had to adapt how we involve volunteers or team members. It is rare to find somebody that will volunteer consistently week after week. Those people are out there and you can find them. But what we have found is that we have to be a little more flexible. So if I have someone that wants to serve every other week, then we make that possible. So those are some trends for us. We need to share current trends with our leaders, our volunteers, and our team members, but we need to understand trends and that things just sometimes simply aren't the way they used to be. Okay? Number 3, develop a clear job description. I'm not going to give you any more detail about that. I think we've talked about that enough, but give them a clear job description. Okay, number 4 is train. How do we keep volunteers trained? Don't just train them once at the beginning when they get involved. Training is an ongoing process. We've talked about this. I'm not going to spend any more time there. Okay, number 5, always support volunteers. Support them and their family when they're going through crisis, when they're facing a death, when they're facing a good time in their life like a wedding or a graduation, or maybe their child is in a program at school and things like that. Find ways to support your volunteers outside of Sunday and Wednesday. That is so very important. They need to feel that support. They need to feel that affirmation and that love from you, to know that you care about them not just when they're serving, but you care about them as an individual, as families, as people. So very important. All right, number 6 is provide times for spiritual growth. You know, from time to time, I may share something through social media with our team members and our volunteers, our leaders. We have some specific Facebook groups designed for that, or I may do it through a text. And when we're together for different meetings or things, I always try to share some spiritual lesson or just, simple spiritual truth that can help them in their walk with the Lord. So provide times for spiritual growth. Make sure that your team members, your volunteers are involved in corporate worship. Not the only time they're at church should never be only when they serve. That is one of the requirements that we have for our team members and volunteers, that they are involved in services during the week. Now we ask that they do that at least Sunday morning, because we had 2 services at Griffin, so we ask that they serve one and then go to the other and then choose either Sunday or Wednesday. So to be involved 2 out of the 3 services. So that's important as well. All right, number 7, we're going to finish up here. I've got 2 more. Number 7 is recognize volunteers. Anytime you can do that publicly, whether it be in the church, whether it be through social media, whatever it may be, anytime you can recognize your volunteers and team members, that is always a big win for you. It's a big win for your pastor. It's a big win for the church. So that is very important. I do want to tell you that there is one old school method I try to use quite a bit, and it goes a long way with people, and that is handwritten notes or cards, because people understand that you took the time to write that and to do that. And so that goes a long way. So recognition in little ways, recognition in big ways are very important, okay? And then the last, and we've already talked about this a little bit, but evaluate volunteers. Find times, maybe once a year, that you rotate through your classes or your groups and you do some evaluation. That observe volunteers in the classroom, provide resources for any problems they may have. That is so very important, okay? So those are some principles about why volunteers quit and how to keep volunteers. So I just want to challenge you. You know, recruiting is an ongoing process. It's something that we do every time. That's why you, as the children's pastor or the children's leader, it's important for you to Make sure that you always put yourself in opportunities to meet people and to be around people, whether that be at church, at the ballpark, wherever it's at. I know here in Griffin, we have many of our families that play soccer, and a lot of times they're in baseball. And so a lot of times we have several families that may be at the fields at one time. So we get around just to build relationship with build relationship with them. But it also gives us it may present an opportunity to recruit them for something we're doing. So I just want to challenge you with that. And my prayer for you is that you'll be able to build that all-star team that you're looking for. Any of the information I've shared, if you have further questions or need clarification on anything, hopefully our information, I'll figure out a way to get our contact information included. But feel free to call me, contact me via phone or email. I'll be happy to answer any questions you can or that you have. And so thank you again for allowing me to present this Building an All-Star Team to you. I pray God's blessing over you, your family, your ministry, and your church. God bless, and we'll see you later.